Guilty Until Proven Innocent brings you prominent advocate and former civil rights attorney Ron Haley, alongside prominent advocate and former NAACP President Eugene Collins, as they tackle hard-hitting issues like only they can. Hard truths, bold voices. Let's talk about it.
Listen, the name of our new podcast is Guilty Until Proven Innocent, where public perception is not always reality. We will be taking a look at both national and local stories from the purview of what has been presented to the public and what the public's perceptions are, and challenge that with what alternate or other realities may be. And hopefully we're able to open minds, change opinions, but most importantly, have a healthy and open but yet unfiltered dialogue.
And man, we're touching on some hot stuff tonight. We're going to be touching on the Diddy case. We're going to be touching on black mental health, as well as some recent things that's happened here in Baton Rouge. So we're going to touch on a little bit of everything. And, you know, when you look at that title, Guilty Until Proven Innocent, Haley, we've been on this track a long time now, right?
Long time.
And for the longest, I didn't realize, like, we were in a special moment. And I remember that first time that we ever got together was across the water, across the river, like the old folks used to say in Port Allen. Joseph Richardson. Ben Crump was down leading the press conference, and we were two young guys just kind of in the background at that point.
We're still young.
I'm still young. We were two young guys in the background at that point. I think my beard was even at that point still all black. And I remember standing in front of that courthouse and thinking like, man, you know, this is the beginning of something. But even then, I didn't realize like how special that moment was until it was over. And things started to slow down, and you started getting the phone calls from around the country asking about specific cases. You started getting the phone calls asking for help and your thoughts on different things. You started getting the calls like, hey, can you come here and check this out? And then you realize, okay, we were really a part of something special all those years. And I don't know about you, it just never felt that way in the moment.
It never feels that way in the moment because you're pulled in so many different directions. And if your heart is in the right place, it is about that client, that family, that cause that you're trying to champion. And you really do not get the opportunity to really breathe until that case of that moment is over.
Man, you know, Haley, you know it wasn't nothing for somebody to leave something on our cars. We come outside, there's a packet on our car.
Go to the graveyard.
Go to the graveyard to pick stuff up. You know, you in a hotel and somebody's knocking on your door at 3 a.m. with information. Like that stuff like literally happened all the time, to the point where you telling family members and friends, they don't even believe it, right? And at the same time, you're like, they're afraid for you, like how this person even knew you was there. I'm like, I don't know. And you just kind of keep moving. And I often think like how many times like we have been like in the crux of some things, right? Like even now, like people here in the studio audience, man, y'all, we gave out the address privately because, you know, me and Haley have made a lot of friends, but we made a whole lot of enemies. And
some we know, some we don't.
So, for real. So I don't necessarily want to sit here and can't move too quick if I needed to. But man, I just, you know, as we start this new journey, I just can't help but think about like all of those times over the years, all of those press conferences, all of the work that actually took place, and just the wild stuff that happened, man. Like stuff that we told people like, man, you're lying. And I'm like, nah, that happened. That for real happened.
No, it definitely did. Listen, we've had a time, and what I'm excited about is, listen, this is a new chapter in the journey that we took on together approximately 6 years ago. And there's a certain freedom that comes with doing it our way. And that's what excites me the most about this podcast, is that we're not restrained. We're not restrained to a cause. We're not restrained to a client. We're not restrained to a family. Mm-hmm. This is about you and I and delivering the message that we want to deliver to the people, completely unfiltered from us, by us.
Yeah. And that's what brings us here today. So without further ado, we didn't talk enough about the old stories, but I'm going to tell one more story before we get on, Haley. Because, you know,
preach on, tell the story.
I'm going to keep it real but for just a second, right? And all of us in here black, so I'm going to talk about black folks. And I feel like I got a little permission to do so. But I always tell folks, man, black folks will just make stuff up on you. Like, it ain't got to be true. It ain't got to be actually happen. It ain't got to be nothing going on. Like, black folks will make some stuff up. I remember we were going to Livingston to work a case, right?
I know the case you're talking about.
Yeah. Boye was actually the driver that night, right? That was a high-paid driver, right? So Boye's the driver. We driving down to Livingston. It was a case of where a police officer had actually hit somebody and killed them. So we walked through every step of the route. We filmed it. We timed it. We showed people exactly like, hey, this couldn't have happened unless this dude was doing this rate of speed. And I remember there was a film crew that had called last minute and they wanted to kind of tag along with us to see some of the things that we were doing. Again, we not even realize like this is pretty special that like a whole film crew from Jersey came down to follow us and document what we were doing. So they're in the car, they're filming, we're walking through exactly what the police say happened that night. And we get to this little bar in Livingston Parish, right? And we step out in suits and all of this good stuff, and we're in the middle of KKK territory at this point. We walk in, and I'll never forget, like Haley is walking in like he's at home, and I'm like, Haley, like chill out, like just back up a little bit, like this don't look like our spot, and it's wild, right? So we get in there, we start dancing. I get to the DJ booth, and I convince the DJ to play "Bag That Thing Up," right? So everybody's in the club bagging that thing up, and I'm literally, Haley knows me, I'm working the room getting information, right? I'm working the room, finding out who people are, finding out who's there, who knows the cop and stuff like that. And then Boye say, let's buy shots. So we buy folks shots, and literally the film crew is there like, man, how did y'all just do that? Because like about time we got through the room, everybody had given us so much information on the case. It literally broke the case wide open.
It did. Listen, the actual owner of the bar came out and went on camera with us twice that night. And then they came back and did a second interview with the film crew based on how we interacted with them. And I think that means that, listen, there's more to bring us together than does bring us apart. Right is right, wrong is wrong. But oftentimes what gets messed up is what the public seems, or a certain segment of the public believes is their perceptions, really isn't the reality of the situation. And that's what I love about where we're going to go with this podcast, is that it's about opening minds. It is about opening hearts. It is about creating a safe space to have a dialogue. But again, I'm going to keep on using this word, a very unfiltered dialogue, because oftentimes when we filter the dialogue, it gets watered down. And what I mean by unfiltered, I'm not talking about we got to get up here and use every MF, B word, and curse word in the book, but actually unfiltered really means being open and honest about our feelings and our assessment of the situation, and hope that is received on the other side with the utmost good faith, to where, listen, if you give it back to me, it's not something that I want to hear, or it goes against what I necessarily believe at that moment, that's fine. But I'm going to keep my mind open to change, and I hope that everyone that is here tonight and those who will receive this podcast once it's released, keep their minds open to change as well.
And you know, just to kind of get back and close that story, right? So we're in this bar in Livingston. We've gotten all this information. The owner has came out and has basically said, hey, I was the only witness there. The dude wasn't even at this place. He was over at that place, and the cop passed here. And like literally, like this went to grand jury because of that night. It was like a phenomenal night. And when I talked about black folks will just make up anything or any story, there was literally one black person in the whole club. When we got back to Baton Rouge, because we were working on another high-profile case at the time. I forget which one, but we were working on another high-profile case at the time. We get back to Baton Rouge, and our phone is blowing up from the family. Not only the family, our families, our friends. And they're like, Eugene, we got a video, and you and Ron Haley, y'all ain't out there working. Y'all down there in Livingston drinking and dancing with white women. And I was like...
There's nothing wrong with that.
I ain't saying nothing wrong with it, but I'm like, man, y'all just cooked up a whole story, and we down there with a whole film crew, like a film crew that like got T-shirts on, labels and logos and everything. But what got back to Baton Rouge is that me and Haley was down there getting drunk with white women. And I'll never forget that. And that case with the grand jury, but folks in town were mad at us at the time because we were down in Livingston getting drunk with white women. And when we talk about like guilty until proven innocent, I think that highlights it because we were down there doing good work, but sometimes the individual feelings in such a small area, the good work that we did, the story that got back was something totally different. I remember I see some of my former members of the NAACP in the room, like they were approaching me like, hey, was you and Haley down there with white women getting drunk? And they all started with that white women getting drunk thing. And it was my fault because I had asked them to play back that thing up. And I was like, maybe I should have started with something else. But it was a wild time. And I think about that, like, because sometimes.
It was a wild time, but it was a good time.
It was a good time.
And listen, to be very clear, the family we're fighting for in Livingston that night was a white family.
Yeah.
So we're fighting for right. We don't see color when it comes to taking on the fight. And again, as we approach this podcast, we're not going to see color either. But we are going to give our perspectives as black men. Yeah. And I hope that is received.
Yeah, and I say all that to say is that sometimes you got to seek truth for yourself. You can't just take what people say. You can't take every rumor. You got to go find out what's happening for yourself. One thing I know is that they said Haley was on the investigation. They just said I was on the investigation. They just said about 4 or 5 people in this room was on the investigation. And ain't nobody in this room went to jail yet. One thing I know about down south is black folk break laws, they go to jail. So that's just what it is. So like, go find out the truth for yourself. If you don't find out nothing else from this podcast, go get the truth for yourself. But we go jump right into the Diddy case, right? And we have had a lot of internal conversations.
A bunch.
About Diddy. And Ron and I always have these conversations about cases, and it sharpens you, it gets you to thinking. We start doing research. But Haley, like I'm gonna let you jump this off because we've had so many talks about this Diddy case, and I will say this, like from the very beginning, Haley called this case. Haley said exactly what he was gonna be charged for, exactly what would happen, and he predicted a lot of things that happened in this case. I'm gonna let you jump it off, Haley.
Well, the first thing, listen, this is not to besmirch any of the women that are victims in the case. There are victims. You know, the women that he dated were victims of severe domestic abuse, battery, domestic violence, and manipulation. And that cannot be watered down. However, what he was charged with in federal court, that had nothing to do with it. And so if you want to blame anyone for why he was not prosecuted in state court, blame his enablers, blame those who knew, who came and testified finally after 10, 11 years. I'm not talking about the women that, hey, also, did he do this to this person? Also, did he do that to that person? Well, they're the reasons why. They had the opportunity to go to the police then to stop this from happening, but they didn't until they thought it was safe. And I think the moment where people felt it was safe, Eugene, to talk about and try to expose Diddy, expose Diddy was when the video with Cassie came out.
Yeah.
It was so appalling and deranged and crazy to see him running down full sprint with just a towel on, not even trying to keep the towel up. He's not caring in a public hotel, that it made any rumor about him at that point possible. The perception of Diddy, the perception of Sean Combs changed forever when that video came out. And that allowed for a lot of crazy ass rumors about him to come out, which I think negatively affected the case.
It did, Haley. And one thing you brought up from the very beginning is that was what happened to Cassie wrong? Most certainly. But he wasn't on trial for that.
No.
That was the problem. He wasn't on trial for that particular video. It was a lot of other things.
Them allowing the narrative that this person was unhinged and using words like Rico to come out, I think it poisoned the minds to the detriment of the government of the potential jurors coming in there. Because I don't know about you, Eugene. I don't know about anybody else that's here. When I heard Rico, I'm thinking, okay, Puffy must be using these freak offs, these sex parties to videotape and blackmail very powerful people in the industry in order to advance himself.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And so maybe, listen, the CEO of Revolt or the owners of Revolt, the board members, maybe they're on tape with Diddy. Maybe his artists on tape with him, and that's how they're signing these messed up record deals. That's what I'm thinking when they're saying, listen, sex by extortion. But that's not what the reality of the case was. The reality of the case was he had a very peculiar sexual appetite, and he was a fucking horrible boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's criminally horrible. But that does not make him guilty of RICO. But the tape itself made every possible crazy rumor possible in everyone's mind. Now, I'm going to tell you, and I don't know how this is going to rub everyone in here, and those who are able to view this, I don't know how it's going to rub them. The federal government, will be very clear, put the wrong victims up.
That's an important point, Haley. That's an important point, and I'm glad you touched on that, right? Because when you look at just the core essence of the case, Cassie and the other young ladies were co-conspirators, which probably means they had to cut some kind of deal with the government to not be brought up on charges themselves, right? When you look at it, the only folks that he could have trafficked were the men.
The 27 men.
But getting the American public to believe that, hey, this man did not want to have sex with these 10 beautiful women that's a hard sell, right? So they went with the fact that the women were the victims in the case when it was probably the men.
So, and I would be clear on this point. The women are 100% victims of being involved in an abusive relationship with Puppy.
Yeah.
100%. I don't think any reasonable person can say that they are not victims of domestic abuse. They're not victims of manipulation. They're not just victims overall. However, when you talk about what he's being charged with, prostitution and sex trafficking, it's the 27 men that were flew from Florida to New York, back to California, all across the country, that would be considered or should have been considered victims. And I think that to drive home a deeper point, society, there's a perception, and it goes back to what we're saying, perception isn't always reality. There's a perception when it comes to sex that men are always in control. There's a perception when it comes to sex that men have the position of power. That is not the truth. That is not the truth in every situation. Each individual consensual sexual relationship, there are different power dynamics in that. And just because you're a man does not necessarily mean that you have the edge in this relationship with this woman. And so I'm going to flip it like this. Let's say Puffy liked to see his girlfriends watch him have sex with other women, and they're okay with that. I'm telling you that if the names of the sex workers, instead of being the Punisher and the Hammer, whatever other nicknames the guys had that were having sex with Cassie and his other girlfriends, if it was the other way around and the names were Bambi, Honey, Sugar Baby, guess what? They would be considered victims. And here's the reason why. If you take gender out of it, if you said that, listen, you need to fly over here to engage in a weekend's worth of sexual encounters, that these encounters were so intense that you had to take a pill to make sure that you could perform in those encounters, and that you could not naturally climax until those who were there told you that you could. That you had to put your leg this way, you got to open your mouth this way, you got to do this. If you don't put a gender on it, you consider that person to be a victim. But the fact is, Eugene, you said it right, that, hey, it is okay, because what man would not want to sleep with a beautiful R&B superstar? What man would not want to sleep with a beautiful model? You don't know if that's what they're into. You know, if that's the color that they're into, you know, if that's the size that they're into. The idea that, you know, this is not this one size fit all thing. You know, and these men all testified that they had to take prophylactics to make sure that they could perform for 24 to 36 hours at a time. If that was a woman having to perform, that, then the government would have charged him with 27 counts of these things instead of 3 counts. But the idea, this gender bias that we have about the roles of gender in relationships, I think made the government very, very short-sighted in what the presentation was of the case. And I will tell you this: if these men were being considered the victims and named victims in the case, it wouldn't matter about whether or not there are questions of consent between Cassie and the other Jane Doe, or whether or not, listen, after the text message, hey, I love a freak off, can't wait till the next freak off, that would be inconsequential. Because in that dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, if you're looking at it like a pyramid, Puffy may be on top of the pyramid, but right underneath that, the co-conspirators.
Yeah.
These women also testified that they had freak offs with these men without Puffy being there. Yeah. And so if you're looking at who has the power in it, who was powerless in this, or who has the least amount of power, it's the sex workers. It is not those that they are engaging in the sex with.
It was the men, right? And then when you look at trafficking, right, that has to cross a federal nexus. So when you look at having to cross a federal nexus, that only included the men.
I agree.
So that case was doomed from the very beginning, right?
Based on how it was presented.
Yeah.
But you go back to the video, it made everything possible.
It made everything possible because of how the video looked. And then, like, when you look at, let's say, because I had to break this down for my mama, right? And she didn't understand that, like, hey, why are younger people talking like this is so normal? And what I don't think, and I'm just going to specifically speak to the black folks, because that's who I hang out with the most. I don't know about the other side a lot, right? Sex for black folks is changing. It is not the same thing that it was, say, 20 years ago, right? So black folks are experimenting. Black folks are into BDSM. Black folks are into voyeurism. Black folks are into dominatrix stuff. Black folks are out here having sex parties. That is happening. And that's not happening in a far off place. That's happening right here in Baton Rouge. That's happening right here in Louisiana, Lafayette, Shreveport, Lake Charles, all around. Black folks
not just New Orleans.
Yeah, not just New Orleans. Black folks are having sex differently. That's what it is. If you don't believe me, ask your nieces, ask your nephews. If they're honest with you, they will tell you it is not just I'm gonna have sex with me and my girlfriend. Like, they're inviting people in the bedroom. They're going places and they're taking off their clothes. They're having parties. They're doing stuff like that. Black folks are having different types of sex. So when they saw this stuff on the internet, and they was like, shoot, if Puffy a freak, Lord, they gonna try to investigate me next. You know, you know what I'm saying? But stop me when I'm lying. Like,
you're not lying.
Black folks are doing different type of things here. Like, it's different.
I'm gonna cut you off there. Like, I don't think it's just, black folks are doing different type of things. I think just sex has evolved. I mean, our country has evolved as it pertains to what relationships look like. Mm-hmm. Listen, it was illegal in this country for same-sex people to be married just 14 years ago. And that seems like 100 years ago that happened. Mm-hmm. Like, that was a monumental shift. And I'm not saying that means they're having a different type of freaky sex. What I'm saying is our perceptions of what sex is and what's normal in sex has sped up very, very fast just in the last decade and a half.
Nah, but bro, I'm gonna keep it real with you. With black folks, it's a little different because they still Southern Baptists at the end of the day, right? It's a little different with them, and the only reason I'm saying that is, like, you go to, like, my mama, when I was trying to explain to her, like, hey, it may not be as weird as you think for somebody to be at a party and have sex in a group, and she was like, huh? She was like, y'all going to hell. Like, that's what she thought, right? But the sense of it is that, like, black folks are engaging in that, where I didn't see that within the black population 20 years ago. I mean, when I was in high school, right, if you told a black man or a black woman that they were performing oral sex on somebody, they were ready to fight. you were gonna get in a fight about that. A dude would have punched you, a girl would have slapped you. Nah, they got whole songs about eating booty. I mean, like, that is the truth. Y'all know I'm not making this up, right? And like I've seen like people write poems about it being a requirement lately, right? So the whole sense and nature of black folks around sexual issues is changing, but I think that's because black folks historically have been a very conservative bunch of folks, right? A very conservative group. And you're starting to see some of the younger black folks challenge that notion, right? Like, that notion is changing. So when I saw the response on the internet, it was weirding my mama out that everybody thought this was so normal. And I'm just like, well, I know why it's normal. More people participate in this than you realize. And that was something hard to explain to people. Like, people participate in this stuff. Like, this whole genres and segments dedicated to it. So Diddy, as they called him a freak, or, you know, they talked about the baby oil and stuff like that. I had a good frat brother say, like, man, when I saw that, I threw all my baby oil away.
Now, and that's one thing that I thought was distasteful about the presentation of the case. You know, what goes on in somebody's bedroom, whether they're inviting, you know, one person in there or 5 different people in there. Everyone is consenting to what's going on there. That is not anyone's business as to the very, very graphic details or non-graphic details of it. Folks need to mind their own business, in my opinion. What goes on in folks' bedroom. Basically. But I want to pose this to you, Gene. If the sex workers weren't black, do you think it's something different?
Oh, most certainly, brother.
Do you think the perception of what black men are or should be had to do why the government and really society as a whole could not conceptualize why these men may be and probably were victims in this case?
Well, that, right? Because if you look at the black male in this country, right, like, nobody's going to ever see us as a victim. That's and now we're told to even portray any sense of victimhood is wrong, even though we've been a victim in this country since they put us on the boat and brought us across the waters and we landed on these banks, right? But we're taught that that's not the way you should do it, right? And let's just not even say that, let's say it's opposite, right? Let's say that we're totally wrong. If we're talking about all white women with Diddy, Diddy would be up a river right now. He'd be down there in alligator Alcatraz fighting pythons, right? Because we know this country, and Malcolm said it a long time ago, the black woman is the most unprotected person in this country, right? But if we were talking about white women, even though I believe that we right, Haley, Diddy would have been down there fighting them alligators in Florida. Diddy would have been down there praying to Trump or whatever else they do to Trump to try to get a pardon and all of that stuff.
So
race matters.
So not saying that Diddy's girlfriends are white.
Yeah.
I'm saying if the sex workers were not black, that would have made a difference.
I'm saying if anybody was black, Diddy'd be in jail. I mean, anybody was white, Diddy'd be right there in jail right now.
So they're white men or any type of men, that's what you believe?
If Diddy could have had a white janitor that was offended, he would be in jail. That's what I'm telling you. If he had a white janitor that was offended, that he saw something, he would be in jail right now. I believe that. I believe that about America until America proves me wrong. That's just what I think.
I'm not gonna push back on you on that point, but I will say this: I do think the words we use to describe black men in general, both positive and negative, have eroded the empathy for black men dealing with mental health issues. So much to the point where a black man having a mental health episode because of lack of empathy that society and sometimes even themselves have for themselves can lead to somebody's death. Listen, some of the words that used to describe black men, both positive and negative: aggressive, strong, angry,
promiscuous.
We said strong, athletic, fast. Those things, again, in a vacuum, doesn't necessarily think all those things aren't necessarily negative connotations towards black men, but the idea that they're supposed to be tough, that they are supposed to protect, that they're not to be fucked with, to use French words, since we are in South Louisiana, I think leads to a situation that happened recently with the Baton Rouge Police Department.
Yeah, well, and just to kind of close that point, some, audience members text me, right, and they're exactly right. When we talk about the whole sense of the Mandingo warrior, right, or the Mandingo in this country, or how black men were pitted out and basically made to be breeders, right? So Diddy was doing something to these men that this country has always done. So it didn't seem abnormal in every way to some folks, right? And that's why I think the men in this case were never considered victims, because that's just what this country thinks about black men. So I totally agree with you, right? But when we look at like some of the stuff that happened here locally, right? And we're talking about the incident on Washington Street where the guy came to the door with the scissors. And let's say this, right? I know it is protocol. It is their procedure, it's their training. When you get to that door, you're going to have one cop on lethal, one cop non-lethal, right? That's just what they do. And even though when you see it, it looks weird, that's kind of what they do. So you have one on the taser, one on the gun. That's not abnormal. What I did find troubling about that is that it almost seemed like the taser and the gun went off at the same time. So it didn't seem like the guy with the gun waited to see if the taser was going to work. And when you take a closer look, he had the scissors, he had the sharp part in his hand, and he had his hand above his head like this. So he had the part that could have actually stabbed the officers in his hand, not really like he was trying to stab. It was clear like he was kind of like out of it, kind of like moving around.
Didn't make a step towards him.
Didn't make a step towards him at all. And not only that, like, when we talk about even if it fit within some resemblance of policy, it's what we always talk about, that policing in itself needs to change to fit what the community looks like in 2025.
And resources need to be put into those things, right? And so when we talk about budget cuts or what's going to be allocated, we don't need an over-militarization of the police. Mm-hmm. We need resources that's going to help and protect the community. There is no reason when somebody calls 911 for someone having an absolute clear mental health episode that they do not have social workers commissioned to go out there to help de-escalate the situation.
Yeah.
It is irresponsible.
Yeah.
I would say it is negligent to put police officers who do not have that specialized training out there to try to read and react in that certain circumstance. And listen, we have seen it not just in Louisiana, we've seen it across the state. We have seen it in cases across this country where black men suffering from a mental health episode often, I won't say often, can lead to death when the appropriate authorities are called, because the authorities don't know how to handle it. But I believe that the reason why you see an overwhelmingly uptick when it comes to black men suffering from mental health versus any other race or gender, it has to do with what the perception of a black man is.
I agree.
And I think that lowers the bar as it relates to empathy when it comes to addressing someone in that situation. But it goes both ways, right? And so it's not, the onus just isn't on the people that are coming to respond. The onus actually comes to us as well as black men. And I'm not talking about you specifically, me specifically, or any black man in specific here. But what I am speaking of is the fact that because we also believe those tropes about each other subconsciously, right? I'm black, I got to be strong.
Yeah.
I'm black, I got to be tough. I'm black, I have to protect. I'm black, I'm supposed to be able to dance. If I can't dance, like me, I have 2 left feet. Like something is wrong that I'm somehow less black, or if I'm not good at sports, or somehow that is a ding on what my blackness is. And so when it comes to taking care of our own mental health, listen, we aren't addressing these things on the forefront so that we won't have a critical incident down the line.
In this particular case, I think you do have some of the just lack of sensitivity around black men that factors into some of these things that happen in these cases.
And we're not sensitive to each other as well.
We're not, Haley. And the other thing with all of this is that when you literally look at, what policing is today, it hasn't changed a whole lot, right? So when you talk about social workers, and that's stuff that people push back on. When you say, well, you send a social worker in, they're going to get shot or killed. Like, no, that's not the case. Like, a competent mental health professional can work wonders. Like, you will be surprised how good these people really are at their job with just a few letters behind their name. They can really fix situations.
But I want to cut you off on it, Gene, but also I want the public to understand this, that there are very specific calls that go to 911 that deal with some people they need help with a mental health episode.
Yeah.
Right. So this isn't a situation where, hey, this person is accused of beating someone or doing some violence against someone. This is somebody that is having issues. And so this is not about sending a social worker into a heightened dangerous situation, such as a bank robbery or some type of standoff. This is, hey, my loved one is not taking care of himself. My loved one will not take a bath. My loved one will not take his medication. I can't control my loved one. You call 911, they get the coroner to come out there, but police help escort and then make a determination whether or not this is criminal behavior or whether or not this is someone that needs to be temporarily committed. But when those situations where the determination of someone should be committed or not, you have to have a social worker out there. You have to. You
do, and it's not always just with the mental health thing, right? Like I'm a trained social scientist, right? So I remember a few years ago there was some young men. They were held up in a hotel over there off of Sherwood, and literally these young men reached out to somebody to reach out to me and said, "Hey, Eugene, if you're in the parking lot, we'll come out." So I went over there to the hotel and I literally stood in the parking lot. I got on the phone. I called them. I said, "Hey, brothers, I'm in the parking lot. Man, y'all go ahead and put everything down. Hey, put the phone on speaker. Don't have nothing in your hands. The police about to come in. When they come in, just raise your hands and go out, right?" Now, here was a hours-long standoff. As soon as I got in the parking lot, I talked to these young men on the phone. They were literally coming out of that hotel room in about 20 minutes, right? Because they had somebody in that space that they had trust in. And so sometimes it's not always about mental health. I think the community, and you look at trained professionals outside of law enforcement, can sometimes help law enforcement out a lot more than they think. But I think there's some resistance of letting those professionals in. Because when you let somebody in with a license, you let a social worker in, you let somebody with a psychology background in, those people typically hold like high standards of morals, and they're typically very protective of their license and their profession, right? They'll tell on you. Like they will tell on you. So those people are often not wanted in fields where you gotta sometimes not be as transparent, right? So I think some of that is not always, hey, it's not that we don't know we need it. We don't want outsiders in here to really see what goes on behind the scenes, right? Because then you gotta tell folks like, hey, I did some good stuff, but there's some jack stuff I did too. But yeah, when you look at situations like this, I totally agree with you, Haley. Competent professionals in the mental health field, or even the social science field, right? I think that if you started to couple officers with some of those professionals, and I ain't saying give them a gun, I ain't saying let them work the drone or nothing like that, but just having them in the space, I think that you will probably see more positive outcomes in these situations.
I mean, hell, Eugene, when it's a drug bust, they'll have a canine dog out there to help assist with the investigation.
They do.
And so if you're addressing someone that is having an obvious mental health episode or in a standoff, why not get a trained professional or someone with some particularized skill to come out and assist?
Yeah. And Haley, that makes sense. Like if you could trust a dog, I know you can trust a human, right? So, you know, when we look at these type of cases, and they happen too often, like they happen all over the country where a wellness check turns into death, right? And that's something we got to stop. But in the same sense, I got to tell you, like we got to do it.
Or not just, but not cut you off, but not just death or an arrest.
Yeah.
That will lead to someone going to jail. That will lead to a suicide, someone getting hurt in jail.
Yeah.
That when it comes down to the empathy as it pertains to black men and mental health, it's not just when a gun is used instead of a taser. It is also, hey, we have an option to send somebody to the hospital right now who was clearly tripping.
Yeah. And Haley, I'm glad you brought that up because, like, we talked about some of the cases that we worked. We've been on this trek a long time now at this point, right? It hadn't been always. It hadn't been Batman and Robin. Sometimes it was Batman and Superman, right? But I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't realized like something wasn't clicking in my head right until after I was president of the NAACP. Like when I was out and I'm starting to think, I'm starting to look at some of the things that's happened, the trauma that I went through. I remember at one point I looked through my phone and I mean, there was probably 30 or 40, pictures of autopsy photos, right? I had more pictures of autopsy photos in my phone than I did of my children. And like I was starting to have trouble sleeping. I'm waking up in the middle of the night thinking about cases. I'm hearing stuff and I'm like, what is going on? But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't busy. So because I wasn't as busy anymore, I had time to think and I was almost drowning in my thoughts, right? And I thought something was wrong. And I remember for the first time in my life, like I went to see a counselor and they say, hey, this is what's going on. And that counselor said, hey, it's PTSD, which when I look at the cases you work, you probably should have PTSD, and it was the first time I had encountered that. And it was like, at first I was like, man, like you feel bad at first, right? Because you still want to do the work at the same level. You don't want to have to stop or slow down, right? But I remember, and I'll never forget this, we were in Clinton, Louisiana, and I met this mom. I think her kid had gotten shot in the back over some chicken or something like that.
I remember that.
And I drove to Clinton to check out the case, to look into some things. And I remember I met the mom in the parking lot outside of the DA's office. And in one of those cases, I don't remember exactly this case, the officer that had shot the kid was actually doing crowd control.
He was. I was there.
Yeah, he was doing crowd control. So I'm like, I know we ain't gonna win when the officer that shot the person is working the crowd. So I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna work. But when you look at that experience, I remember meeting the mom in the parking lot, and for 2 hours she held my hand and cried. Like before I could ask her any questions, before I could get to what happened to your son, like she held my hand and she just cried for 2 hours, and I had to sit there and comfort her for 2 hours, right? And I remember thinking back to that, and like that memory comes up again and again and again and again. And I remember thinking like something ain't quite okay with that's still sitting there. And for the longest, when you talk to people, you talk to other men, you talk to family members, they say, oh man, that was just a part of the work, that was your job. But sometimes the job can reach over into your mental and you don't realize it have. So as Black men, we gotta have that conversation. Because we'll think stuff is just normal, and hey, I know I saw some dead people and stuff like that, not realizing, I remember working cases, and before the family would see the body, I would always go see the body first because I wanted to be able to soften that blow for the family. And you take on that trauma and pain each time you do that. Even with police officers, they have the same thing. You're out there seeing daily trauma. You're out there seeing bloodshed. Even with our children that live in these communities, we always want to say, well, what's wrong with these kids? These kids are so different. These kids have saw people killed on their block since they were 3, and you expect them to think normally.
It's not normal to encounter death at the rates that you have. It's not normal for the kids in the community to encounter death when it's just like, oh, it's just another day. Just because I didn't know this person, oh yeah, this person on this street died. It doesn't hit you like it was the first or second time, to where you're numb to these things. That's when you know, no, you haven't toughened up. That's when you know it's reached a threshold of a problem that's gonna bubble up at some point in your life. And I like you said about the police officers, I think we have to understand they deal with that too. When you talk about these detectives, these homicide detectives that are working these cases, that see the worst of the worst to the point where it doesn't even bother them anymore. That's where that's a problem at.
That's, Haley, that is when it really becomes a problem, when it just becomes second nature to see these things and it don't even shake you, it don't even stir you. And I'll be honest with you, I think if I was still fully engaged in that, I probably would have never thought about it, right? But when you slow down and you finally get to sleep, right, and the phone not ringing all night, and that's all the thoughts you have, it can get to you. And it's hard to explain to people that, hey, I usually can take your bullshit, but I can't take it today. It's a hard thing because they're used to seeing Eugene, right? And the one day that Eugene don't show up, you got to explain why Eugene not here. So because you can't say that, because the world has taught us that black men can't feel, you get stuck in a spot sometimes. And like literally I can admit this now because I can tell you, like, there were leaders within NAACP that I went to and said, hey, I'm seeing shit. And they were like, oh man, you're a warrior. Just keep pushing, just keep going. We got bigger things. And nobody ever done anything about it. And it was because of the notion, like, you're a warrior, keep going. And we talk about compassion fatigue, right? It's a real thing. You should look it up, right? And we got to stop just telling people to go on, just be strong. Like, hey, we need you on this case. We need you on this front line. If somebody tells you, hey, something ain't right, believe them.
I want to talk to you about something else that just isn't right to me.
Yeah.
It seems to be been an ongoing culture war within the politics of this country that is matriculated to the 50 states across. This notion of we have to be first, or America first. That's a big calling call for my brethren, if you want to call them that, on the other side of the political spectrum, that it's America first, America first, America first. The perception is that if America is first, that is good for Americans. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes the policies that put in place America first are policies that actually hurt Americans. Mm-hmm. And so this notion that I'm gonna tell you what I believe this notion of America first is, that's been spewed, that has been put out, that's been a part of the right-wing propaganda. What it is that this notion that in today's society, in the 21st century, that the United States of America is the modern-day Roman Empire. And that as long as we have the standing of being the fastest, the strongest, the most, the richest, those with, the most technologically sound, all those things, like long as, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best, that somehow means that's good for Americans. But America First policy, such as this bill that just got passed, is actually hurting everyday Americans. And I don't know about you, if I'm in charge of the DNC, I'm turning that phrase America First on its head, and I'm saying, listen, we're going to be about Americans being first. And it's all propaganda, Gene. Mm-hmm. The idea that America First means that every American is going to feel it in a positive way in their pockets just is not true. Listen, look at the job cuts. Mm-hmm. Look at the programs that this big, beautiful bill that we are somehow going to be a better country. How's this country going to be better for Americans when less people are going to be able to go to the doctor? How is this country be better for Americans when less people are going to have jobs? Just because the budget is cut, these budget cuts are hurting Americans in the name of America being first.
And Haley, I'm gonna ask you something, right? And I'm gonna set up for this. Who are Americans, right? Because when we look at the whole notion of American, I mean, black folks, we just became American. When W.B. Du Bois came up with the theory, double consciousness theory, right? When he talked about that you could be both African and American at the same time. But before that theory, we were not Americans. We were niggas, we were colored, we were Negroes, we were a lot of other things, but we were not American.
See, I got to push back on you. But push back on there. Yes, we were called those things.
We were called those things, right?
But that does not necessarily mean that we weren't supposed to be afforded the rights of Americans. And so right now, as we stand in this...
So what are the rights of Americans, though? I'm going to ask you, because I've always been confused about what's the right of Americans. Because when you look at the Native American, I mean, they were almost wiped out of this country. And then they were given land on reservations to kind of bring some resemblance of peace because they were ready to fight to the last man, right? And then when you look at how the white American has treated other white Americans. Like you look at the Irish when they came to this country, some of the Italians when they came to this country, they didn't necessarily have rights. So I always challenge that notion of what is American values and principles, and what is Americans supposed to be treated like? Because over time, I've seen different subgroups of people that we call Americans treated very un-American. So, like, I don't think like when you talk about American principles and values, I don't think that we really know what that is. It's been many different things over the decades, and it's completely been flipped on its head in the 19th century.
I mean, listen, it's definitely been flipped on its head, Gene. So this is not to say that this is not I guess the point of bringing this up in the conversation is not about whether or not American values fits what the ethos of what America is supposed to be. It's the idea that right now we have a segment of our politics that are using America First as propaganda, but the policies of America First, cutting back on Medicaid, cutting back on jobs, gutting the Department of Education completely down to its nubs, are not benefiting Americans. But because they say, listen, we're doing this for America First, America First, America First, then it's putting into the minds of people that, hey, these policies must be good for Americans in general, and they're just not.
But you know what? You want to know who I blame for that, or what I blame for that? I blame the bus boycott. And I'm gonna tell you why I blame the bus boycott. Because when black folks decided they were gonna boycott the bus line, black folks came and said, "Hey, we don't want y'all riding their buses no way. We can have our own buses over here. Y'all come ride the bus with us." Instead, we say, nah, we're going to march, we're going to fight, and we're going to scream, we're going to holler, we're going to get hit in the head with sticks and get chased by dogs to ride their bus. When we had black folks that own buses, right? Like when we talk about DSEG, right? And that's been a hot topic conversation lately with charter schools and everything else, right? Like we asked for equal access, but somehow that turned into sending our kid halfway across town to Woodlawn. Like somehow that turned into, well, we're going to create so many seats at this magnet school when the spirit of DSEC was to have magnet schools to get black kids on par with the other kids. Forget that. But we're going to create so many seats for black kids at this school. But the true equity within that means that the kid in Zion City is still at an F school, right? When all we really needed was better books and better facilities, and we had teachers that could teach our own damn kids, right? But once we could go on that side of town, we decided that we didn't even want to teach on this side of town no more, right? Like black teachers were saying, "Oh, I don't want to go over there. I heard somebody got robbed." Motherfucker, it was your cousin that robbed them. Don't act like it wasn't. So I think that when we talk about this stuff, right, I think we got to blame ourselves in some way, because
we do.
Like we had an opportunity to have our own, and we fought for things to get to places where people ain't want us. And then, I'm gonna tell you, our elders will sometimes say, "Well, y'all need to stop going where y'all ain't want it." Motherfuckers, y'all fought for us to go there. That don't make no sense. They don't make no sense when people say that, right? So when we look at these notions, I think they rolling back healthcare, right? But if we still had our own businesses, we could pay the damn doctor out of our pocket. You know what I'm saying? If we still had our own businesses, because I'm just saying, and I know I grew up different and all of that stuff, and the black Muslim culture is a little different and all of that. I get that, right? But wasn't nobody on my block on food stamps, and we weren't rich. We got together, we held suppers if people needed stuff. We got together and we did raffles if people needed stuff. My grandmother would get Slim Goody. Slim Goody was the neighborhood thief. Slim Goody would go to the store. He would steal the ribeyes and he would steal the potatoes. And we would have suppers that Friday. And I'm like, "Mama, well, he's stealing it." "Baby, he ain't stealing from us." So like they would have suppers and they would pay the light bill. Wasn't no government assistance on my block. We just made it happen. I think black folks got away from that and became too dependent on the system. And when black folks like this sister right here build their own systems, we be the first ones to say, "Look at her. Look at what she did. She ain't supposed to have this." Because these Negroes don't want to see that. It's crabs in the barrel, but we got to take it a little bit further. How did the crab get in the barrel? The crab wasn't born in the barrel. The crab was born somewhere else. Somebody put that crab in the barrel, and we ain't had sense enough to know, even though we in this barrel, let's not pull each other down because the same person probably put us in this damn bucket, right? So, like, I hear what people saying about Trump, but I actually like that Trump there. And I'm going to tell you why. Because for the first time in a long time, Trump is forcing black folks to look at the idea that we should have never gave some of these things up. Literally in 1991 and 93, I don't remember the exact year, literally we had the highest number of black people graduate with PhDs in education in our nation's history. But that same year, we had the poorest educational outcomes of black kids. Like, because you want to know what, those PhDs, they ain't want to teach black kids no more because they can go teach Susie. You know, and we got to get back to the crux of that. Trump ain't doing nothing that JFK ain't do. He ain't doing nothing that Clinton ain't do. Just keep it, we love Clinton, but he locked a lot of us up. You know, I'm just going to keep it real. He ain't doing nothing that whoever else ain't do, right? He's doing what a white man in the White House has always done. What's changed is our people.
What's changed?
We got to get our people back to thinking for themselves, working with their hands. Like, let me tell you something. And I'm just going to keep it real for a second. I've been blessed with great kids, right? And you too. Like, people don't know, like, our kids, like, they're some phenomenal talents, like little prodigies, like EC3's acting and all of this stuff, and people calling them about roles. Yours is music, track stars, junior Olympians, and all. Phenomenal kids, right? But if I ever have a kid that I know can't congregate verbs, I'm not going to tell him to go to school and be a lawyer. I'm going to say, son, come on over here. We're going to take you down the street. You're going to be the best welder on the block. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to be the best electrician we can find. We're going to get you on one of these plants. You're going to be the best scaffolder around because we're going to put you in a position not to have a job, but to have a business. Career. A business, not a career. A business. A career still means you working for somebody else. A business, right? Like, and we got away from that at some point. Like, we got away from that at some point that we want to fight for these things. Like, we got to get back to teaching people, like, look, do it for yourself, build on your own, ain't nobody coming to save you. But I agree with you with the America First thing, right? I just had to throw that in there because sometimes we talk about this country, my country, tis the thee, and all of this stuff, and this country ain't never tis my thee or anybody that look like me. That's been it.
But that also does not take away the responsibility to do so and to thrive for so.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not trying to cut through the middle of the road. However, the fact that by law we are American citizens and that our country does owe a certain bit of stability to all Americans.
Yeah.
Not just some.
Yeah.
And so the point making about the America First thing is that, listen, hardly any of the policies of that are beneficial to all Americans in general. These things aren't just hurting black people; they're hurting white people, they're hurting Hispanic people. We're seeing these raids that are going across the country, and the fact that we are marching in the middle of the streets, and we're not gonna, the No Kings March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's important, but you got to remember who puts a king on the throne. And so instead of marching against the king, march against the aristocrats that put him in there. March against the nobles that put him in there. What I mean by that, look at the corporations that gave money, the individuals that gave money, and boycott those businesses. If you're not happy that Amazon, that Jeff Bezos gave money, was at the inauguration sitting next to Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, then instead of that march being downtown by the Capitol, that march should have been blocking entry into the damn Amazon plant.
But hey, now you're talking about like real protest, real disruption. We hold a lot of protests on Saturday when the building closed. When real protest is about disruption. And we look at even like real protests. Dr. King, he talked about real protests. It was a tool. It wasn't the movement. It was a tool. I think today we confuse the protest with the movement. Like, I hated marching. You know that. I hated marching. When people marched, I did it. I done it. You'll see me in front of them in some photos, but I hated it because, like, it was always at a time where it didn't matter. Like, everybody want to say, well, Eugene, I can't come at 2 o'clock when the building open. I don't get off till 5. The people going at 5. And when they see the flyer on Facebook, they gonna leave when y'all say the time is. Like that don't make sense. I think about one of the most effective things we ever did was done with 22 people, and that was when we took over the state police compound.
Yes.
I ain't gonna lie, when them helicopters started flying and we was deep in the state police compound, I had second thoughts. I'm like, how the hell we gonna get out of here? But you know, we took over that compound because we didn't do mass communications. We didn't tell everybody. We took 22 people, and we knew there was gonna be 2 or 3 people at the gate, and it only took 22 people to get past 2 or 3 people. And we did that, and the next day, the superintendent got fired. But it's like what you said. We went and marched on the superintendent's home while he was at home. He didn't expect, because we ain't had no flyers. We ain't do no Zoom calls. We ain't inform all the informants, because they got them too. We just moved, and when we got there, they were really, really surprised that we were there. And they didn't know what to do. They was like, well, we should arrest them. And then somebody was like, well, no, we can't arrest them. It's public property. It wasn't closed off. Well, how y'all ain't know they was coming? Well, they ain't really advertised, because they were used to us advertising like, hey, we're gonna march on this person at this time on this day, and y'all be there early with your water and your ice. Like, nah, man, ain't no protest. It's a picnic. And that's what we got into. So everybody get out there with the little cell phones, take the cell phone videos and put it on there and say, oh, I'm hard at work. Nah, you an ineffective joker. Nothing you did worked. Those old ladies that was in that conference room making those phone calls and sending those emails, those were the people that were really effective. What you did was sexy, but it didn't get nothing done.
Protest without a purpose is a block party. Without the music.
Man, say that. That's a T-shirt. That's a T-shirt, Haley.
Protest
That's a T-shirt, Haley.
Protest without the purpose is a block party.
You know, I think about the bus boycott. I think about the mistakes they made. But I think about the one locally and what some of the successes were, right? They were able to organize that in 24 hours. 24 hours, they were able to get all the black people on the same page that they weren't going to ride the bus next day. They met at a church. They decided to go walk the streets that night and knock doors and tell people, we're not riding the bus tomorrow. No paper, just word of mouth. Arthur Jinks snuck on the largest radio station in the town and decided that he was going to go there and announce on that radio station that, hey, we're not going to ride the bus anymore. 24 hours it took them to organize a large-scale boycott that would
no social media
that became the blueprint.
No cell phone, no text message
for mass boycotts in this country. Haley, 24 hours it took them to organize it. I know Negroes today, you could give them 24 months, they not gonna do a good job. They had 24 hours to get it done and got it done because they had a large, bustling middle class, black middle class, that was anchored by Southern University, that was producing educated people. They were starting businesses. So the black folks that had money, they did their business with black folks. We had one black gas station that gave gas to all the cars, that gave rides during the bus boycott. Esso Gas, I think it was Esso, right there in Schuylerville, Esso Gas. That particular gas company was thriving, right? And you had black people with money. So black people with money had real power. Ever since we gained political seats, black people with money been disappearing. Like, so people say, well, it's all in voting. Nah, I beg to differ, because history says that power comes with black folks with money, not necessarily a political seat. So you can Google it. Like, you can disagree with me, but you can Google it. We lost black people with money, and we gave black people with money up for black people with a political seat or a title. But when black folk had money, if they said they wanted something, they got it. That's just what it was.
I mean, that's anything in America.
That's anything in America. So I challenge the notion that we need more black seats. What good it do me to have a black seat if a white person controlling it? So I know we ain't supposed to say that we need all these black seats. Have you seen some of the Negroes we put in seats lately?
I've seen it.
I don't always agree with that notion. We need to get back to black folks having money. That's where the power at. That's where the power at. Like, and we can't be out here struggle fighting. We out here fighting with stones, and they out here fighting with $1 million checks. You know, we were going to do a call in, but we are way over time. I think we had a good conversation though. Haley.
I think we did.
Yeah, I think I went on a little bit of a tangent there with that stuff with Black Power, right? Because that's one thing I hate about Black Power. Black Power used to be black, now it's pink and lavender. Like I mean, just keeping it real. Like we got to get back to it being black, and not just influx with so many other things. Like we got to get back to it being black, and that's kind of where I leave off at, Haley. I'm sorry I took 10 minutes to get there.
But I think identity politics plays a part of that as well.
Yeah. And you see it already, respectability politics, because he's like, well, we need younger folks in politics, right? Man, the younger folks coming in just like the older ones. They're taking the same paths. They're doing the same things because they know that this is the same playbook. I want to get here, so I got to do it this way. Younger folks ain't coming in being like just different. They ain't coming in being trailblazers. They coming in just like the same old folks. So I don't necessarily think we just need young people in these seats anymore. I will vote for you if you're 86, if you're about me, before I vote for a 26-year-old that's just trying to get somewhere. And let me say this too, and I'm going to say this too. Stop voting for broke people. Because when they broke and they get there, they got to do something to earn money. Make sure they have a job at least. We vote for a lot of unemployed people. Like, this person can't keep a job. You wouldn't hire them, but somehow you voted for them. Like, I don't understand that. We vote for people all the time we wouldn't trust to wash our damn car. And then we want to ask what happened to our community, what happened to our streets, what happened to the street signs, why the houses falling down. You voted for somebody that can't write a complete sentence. What the hell you thought happened? Like, we got a lot of problems and issues. I'm sorry I went on another 3-minute tangent.
Well, listen, hopefully this has started something very special.
I know.
Guilty until proven innocent. The perception isn't always what the reality is.